Hey, I'm back, and you didn't even know that I was gone because I've been so sly about it. I scheduled a bunch of videos in advance, but I'm right now getting the cobwebs out of my YouTube channel. Ah, my fingers are sore. Yeah, I'm talking. I'm gonna do a video. I'm gonna do a book review about Wagnerism by Alex Ross. I moved. I'm not moved. This is not my new place. This is an intermediary place. But I will be in my new place probably in my next video. So just jump to the next video if you want to see a more polished video, perhaps. I don't have a tripod right now. I left it behind. Enough excuses. You don't care about the details. Let's just talk about Wagnerism, Alex Ross. What is this book about, and how relevant is Richard Wagner nowadays? If you, uh, where do I begin? Okay, let's see. So let me just begin in a roundabout way with, I noticed I'm on the emailing list for the San Francisco Opera Company. I've seen some things there. I saw Swan Lake there once, ballet, not opera, but I've seen other things. But somehow I got on their email list, and they emailed me about this current season, which is Richard Wagner. I think they're doing the whole Ring cycle, all four operas, something. I didn't really read it too much because as soon as I got to the part about virtual opera, what does he say in Reservoir Dogs about Madonna? He goes, "I tuned out." That's when I tuned out because virtual opera. What's the point? Like you can get probably better quality videos on YouTube or anywhere else. So I'd rather not live stream opera. Who cares if it's live? I mean, yeah. So what's the point? The point is they're doing Wagner. I think they were planning to do it, live. They're hoping that by now coronavirus would have receded enough to allow that, but nay, it ain't so. Anyways, Wagner is alive and well and being performed in some capacity every year. I'm pretty sure they still do it. Well, not this year, but normally I think they do this festival in, how do you say, Bayreuth, in, where is that? Like Germany, Bavaria, somewhere. Performing Richard Wagner's works. He has many operas. If you don't really know like who is he though, I think the image that I have that I remember most vividly that'll probably spark some memory in your head is old Looney Tunes cartoons when Bugs Bunny would be at the opera. Pretty much always it was some kind of uh, knockoff of Wagner. Maybe it was actual Wagner music. I don't know, but there would be the woman with the big horns like Viking style. That's kind of like what I think of as Wagnerian opera, and these massive productions, way over the top and just yeah. So this book is the second book that I've read by Alex Ross. The first one was The Rest is Noise, which I talked about when I talked about Momus, and that I briefly touched on that book. It's a very good book. I recommend it. The Rest is Noise. I listened to the audiobook of that as well. So I've audiobook both of these, and they're both pretty good sized, but this one I think is longer. And the reader in The Rest is Noise I can't remember his name, but he's a pretty well-known audiobook reader, which you're like, there are well-known audiobook readers, but apparently there are. And I recognize, I've listened to enough audiobooks over the years that I recognize the guy's voice, but I can't remember his name right now. But anyways, this one, Wagnerism, a very different audiobook read by the author. I preferred the first audiobook reader, but this author, Alex Ross, because he's such a great author, I'm willing to, you know, take a slightly less good reader, but still a pretty good reader, and just indulge that because he's a very good writer. I'd say he's one of my favorite nonfiction writers alive today, and yeah, I think is only his second book, but he's like the music critic for, is it the New Yorker or the New York Times, some New York related publication. Anyway, sorry, I was talking to somebody on video and they told me that my voice sounds all messed up. Probably because I'm not talking all the time. I've been in a very non-talkative mode lately. So I'm like I said, I'm decongesting my YouTube channel right now. I didn't say that. Anyways, back to the book. So the book, is this book about Richard Wagner's biography primarily? No. Is it about his music primarily? Even that, no. It's really about 800 pages about the cultural effect of Richard Wagner. And it's going to be traced in this book through many different channels. A lot of it, like, people think of primarily maybe as Wagner associating it with Nazi Germany, because I guess Wagner was Hitler's favorite composer, which is a unfortunate stamp on Wagner's reputation. But Wagner did say and write some pretty racist things against the Jews, I believe, and you can look that up, and it's also covered in this book in different ways. But but this is similar to the video I did about Ariel Pink. I realized I didn't even realize that, but like, how much can we separate, the artist from the art? So that's the question you're going to have to ask. I don't think I've ever actually watched an entire Wagner opera. I want to now after reading this book, but I knew his music. Fair, I know like a lot of the main themes, and like you'll recognize a lot of the themes. The good thing about this audiobook is that they do incorporate samples from music, which I think every musical audiobook should do. It certainly helps a lot. And where was I going with that? So his music, though, I know his overtures, his preludes, things like that, whatever they're called, like the more orchestral works, and I think they're amazing. I think they're very good. I've never gotten into the opera quite as much. I think it's something that happens with opera, is that if you don't know the language, the original language of the opera, it's a little debilitating to the performance. As I've learned, like French, for example, like Carmen is my favorite opera, and watching it as I improve my French, I still can't. Like, hearing the music as they sing it can be a little tricky sometimes than actually speaking the language. But anyways, my German is nowhere near good enough to enjoy a Wagner opera in the original. But I think if it improves, like, I would like to, and I probably will start watching some of his operas just to get more of an idea of the actual stories behind them. Because it's interesting how Alex Ross traces a lot of the cultural elements into things like pop culture, things like Star Wars and superheroes and other things that you wouldn't initially expect Wagner to be, immediately associated with. But somehow he manages to make that connection. But all these other different things, like the black community's interpretation of Wagner, things like that. And he traces the influence during the wars in America, all these different paths. It may be a little frustrating compared to his first book, because the great thing about The Rest Is Noise is that he was always changing subjects pretty rapidly. They're like short essays, whereas this is just 800 pages about Wagner. And if you're not into that, he does take it in different channels, though, that if you get a little bored, it will quickly change the subject, but sometimes it's pretty in depth. So I think having some kind of interest in Wagner probably would help. I think what I liked most about this book was, if you watch my Ulysses series about James Joyce's Ulysses, I have hardly even touched on, I don't think I even mentioned Wagner in the entire series. I did mention Nietzsche, I think, because that is mentioned, but I've started to realize after this book what an enormous cultural force Wagner was. And I don't think I fully appreciated that. And it's something that, because it does, the first sentence, as I'm starting to move towards Finnegan's Wake, the first sentence of that has Tristan and Isolde reference, which doesn't necessarily have to be Wagner. I don't think he came up with that storyline. I think that's an older story that he incorporated. But I've started to see that actually there's a good section in this book about modernism and a lot about James Joyce. I wasn't aware that Alex Ross, I guess, wrote a thesis on Ulysses when he was in college, I think he says at the end. Something like that. But yeah, like the cultural milieu of Nietzsche and Wagner, I think it does show up in Ulysses a lot and in Joyce in general. So I think it behooves me, anyways, as if I'm going to do this course about Finnegan's Wake, just to do something even more niche and unpopular on my channel, that I should at least learn a little more about Wagner's operas. What was I going to say though? Yeah, the cultural influence is incredible, and it's something like it's just one of these things that you don't have to like him or dislike him. You just have to kind of be somewhat aware of him. Like think of something like, I don't know, Harry Potter. It's not something that like you need to love or hate, but it's something that you're probably aware of to some degree. So I think that any history of our culture of the modern era would have to include that to some degree. That's kind of what I think of as Wagnerism, and his like really his push of these really kind of fantastic elements. He connects it with Lord of the Rings. Alex Ross, he talks a lot about, well, not a lot. He does talk about Tolkien though, and C.S. Lewis, who are two of the biggest names in 20th century fantasy literature, like how they were both big Wagnerites. So that's something that I wouldn't have been aware of without this book. I mean, I think I kind of knew about it with Tolkien, but there's just so many. He's just a really good writer. I think he puts things together very well, and he incorporates a lot of things that you wouldn't expect. He has a very broad sense of music and just culture in general. So I like this book. Yeah, I'd read it again. I may at some point read it, the actual textbook, with when I go through some Wagner operas. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna talk about this in another video, but I have kind of decided to not start a Finnegan's Wake course, which I said I was gonna wait till 2025, but to start a playlist which will lead up to the course. It's gonna be like these kind of my attempts to break into Finnegan's Wake, and I think Wagner is something, I'll see how much it actually is incorporated, but that the whole Tristan and Isolde storyline is certainly included to some degree in Finnegan's Wake. And yeah, anyways, that's it for now. I'm going to have new videos soon. Stay tuned.